Hello, everybody, and welcome to the summer semester presentation of Introduction to Social Welfare, Social Work 106. This is, as the slide notes, a 10-week presentation of what is otherwise a presentation of material that we would cover in a normal 15 or 16-week semester. So that tells you that you can be prepared for a lot of reading and a lot of heavy, fast-paced work during the course of the semester. But don't despair, because by the time the semester is over, I think you'll find the material to have been very interesting and worth your time and effort. My name is Bill Galic, and I'll be your instructor during the course of the semester. I have been teaching part-time and almost full-time now with the University of Alaska, Anchorage, for much of the last 30 years. Most of the time that I've taught, I've been based at the campus in Kenai, and somewhere around 10 or 12 years ago, we began to convert many of our classroom-based classes to online learning. Since that time, I have become pretty exclusively involved in online learning, and with the current issues about the COVID pandemic, of course, I was fairly well prepared to switch to online education since I was already there to begin with. I started teaching exclusively for the School of Social Work 7 or 8 years ago. Other than teaching, which really has been a part-time gig for me, I've been employed in the social work field for over the last 40 years. I got my bachelor's from Michigan State in social work in 1974. I know that seems like it's a long time ago to you, but time goes by very quickly, let me assure you. And I got my master's from Florida State University School of Social Work in 1983. Since that time, really, I've been employed continuously in the social work field and have worked in a various array of settings, including public welfare programs, residential care and treatment, child protection in 2 different states, and also outpatient mental health. I retired from full-time field-based social work in 2014 after almost 20 years as a supervisor in the child protection office in Kenai, and began to teach part-time, continued teaching part-time, I should say, for UAA after that retirement. This has become more and more close to a full-time occupation for me, and keeps me quite busy. In 2015, I moved to Indiana from Alaska after 28 years. And so when you contact me, keep in mind that I'm in the Eastern time zone. That puts me 4 hours ahead of you. Rest assured that I haven't forgot about life in Alaska, and I think I'm pretty well prepared to teach this course both from a general perspective as well as from a specific perspective involving Alaskans and social welfare. You'll see my contact information there. The university address is the one that the school prefers that we communicate through, but you should know that my Comcast address is private. No one else looks at that email, and you should feel free to contact me there as well. Also, my telephone numbers, you see I still have my Alaska cell, and that's also a text-capable phone number, although, again, the university prefers that we not text each other, but rather communicate through email through the alaska.edu email address. Both phone numbers also have voicemail that are strictly assigned to me. No one else hears your messages, so again, you can feel free in contacting me and leaving messages there. But again, please keep in mind, I'm 4 hours ahead of you. First, let's talk a little bit about your texts and what you'll be working out of this semester. There are really 2 texts and 1 book that you're required to work from this semester. This first one, The New History of Social Welfare, is the 7th edition. I've been eagerly awaiting the publication of an 8th edition, and I'm not sure it's going to happen. The authors, I believe, are probably retiring from the field. I don't know, but I can tell you that I haven't found another text that covers the material as well as this particular textbook does. The primary author of this text, until the last edition or 2, was Phyllis Day. She is, as you will notice, a feminist writer, and you'll find that some of the material and some of the perspectives that she presents in this book are different from some that you might expect and may stir you up a little bit inside. I know that it did that to me the first time or 2 I worked through this book, but I have come to appreciate her stance over the years. And in fact, appreciate the fact that getting stirred up, upsetting our schema about how the world works and how we explain things around us, is really another way of improving your education and increasing your learning experiences. And so I like that this textbook is a little controversial in some of the things that she says and very upfront. Now, the book ends during the Obama administration, as you can see from the publication date, and so there isn't any material about the Trump presidency in this. I do add some things in my lectures and in some of the writings later in the semester about that. The other book that you're going to work out of is a smaller text by Karen Seacom, the 4th edition of So You Think I Drive a Cadillac. Now, the publisher's doing some funny things with this book, and you're not going to likely find this text with that particular cover on it. And if you have bought the book at the bookstore, you'll probably notice that it's almost looks like a kind of a self-published workbook. But rest assured, it is the full text, and you'll have all the material in there that you need. It's also available in an electronic edition, and I think the publisher would like to encourage you to buy the e-edition. Personally, I prefer having a book in my hands when I'm working through material, but it all goes according to what you prefer. But whether you have the hard copy or the e-copy, you'll be working from the same material. And what this does, as opposed to the other textbook, which gives us really an outline of the development of social welfare policy in America, this textbook looks at social welfare recipients today and the kinds of things that motivate them and doesn't motivate them, and helps you to understand a little bit about the kind of experiences that recipients of public assistance go through. Now, this perhaps may be even more relevant today, given the increased social welfare needs in our nation because of the pandemic and the economic disruption that it's created really all around the world. As I record this lecture, we only probably know the tip of the iceberg of how our lives are going to change and how the economic circumstances of life will change. One thing that we have been told, and I believe fully, is that when we get back to normal, which is probably after we have a vaccine, normal is going to be different from what we were used to before. And that leaves a lot of questions open about just what is going to be different. One thing that I hope might be different is the possibility that we will have more sensitivity to those who are in need. As happened during the Great Depression, a lot of people who had never thought of ever going to make use of social welfare before found themselves having to reach out to the government for assistance. After that period of time, as you'll learn later in the semester, Franklin Roosevelt was elected, and his administration implemented the New Deal, which set up a variety of social welfare programs and really moved us very close to being a social welfare state in some respects. Now, many of those programs have since been rolled back by more conservative administrations, and as the economy has stabilized, but it's wondering now if this disruption will be something similar to the Great Depression. You're hearing many parallels being talked about, like the high unemployment rate, for instance. And so who knows what's going to happen in the future, near future and farther future. Phyllis Day writes in her book about the pendulum swing of social welfare services and how popular they are. And I think we're beginning to see that the pendulum is going to swing back towards more social services. The counterweight to that possibility is the fact that Donald Trump and a very conservative federal court system is in place at this time, and they have not been friendly to social services and social welfare programs. So it's going to be very interesting to see. A lot will probably be determined by the outcome of the election in the fall of 2020. So again, your two primary texts. The first one is The New History of Social Welfare, and this is the textbook that really the outline of the course is organized around. It really kind of starts out in almost caveman times and brings you up to the present day through the Obama administration. And then this look at more of the modern day experience of individuals on public assistance, So You Think I Drive a Cadillac. Now the third book, and again, you can find this in many different forms. This cover is just one cover that I happen to have, but this book is pretty much everywhere. And as you can see, was first published in 1906. Now that's a long time ago, and it's written about the experience of immigrants at the turn of the last century and how they were brought into the economic system and pretty much used up by the economic system in the interests of the capitalists at the time. It was written by Upton Sinclair. And if you remember your American history, you may remember reading about the muckrakers in the early 20th century. These were individuals who were hell-bent upon exposing the social and economic ills of our society, and Upton Sinclair was one of the leading muckrakers. And this book was very famous and had a lot to do with many changes that occurred in society during the early part of the last century. Now, this book is, I think, now considered to be a part of the public domain. If you look on the web, you can probably find it for free. Now, just make sure that whatever version you do work out of, you get an unabridged version, not the abridged version. And please do not use Cliff Notes, because you're robbing yourself of the experience of really getting fully into the characters, because this is a very important part of understanding this book. Now, the book is not particularly easy to read in the first 100 pages or so. There's a lot of detail about the wedding rituals and things like that may not be so important in a longer run, but please work your way through that and you'll find the book will pick up from there. And the primary character in the book, Jurgis, and his family will show you a lot about what it was like for immigrants in those days. Now, it is true that this was written 100 years ago, but it still remains very relevant today. First of all, it shows you what America would be like if we didn't have any social welfare programs, because at the time this book was written, in the early 1900s, there really weren't many social welfare programs at all. The book also spends quite a bit of time illustrating the differences between the upper class, the elite of our society, and the working class. Not only the immigrants that they write about here, but all workers at that time, and the struggles that those two classes experience as they work together. This was the same time that the socialist movement, the socialist political movement, was going on all around the world at the time. It was just a few years later that the Bolsheviks overthrew the Tsar in Russia, and socialism was really spreading as an alternative to the capitalist economic system in many places around the world. And Upton Sinclair, you will find, wants you to be a socialist. He is a socialist, and he writes about how socialism is much better for the common working man than capitalism is. During this period of time, in American politics, socialism actually began to rise and become somewhat of a popular political movement here as well. But forces worked against that, not surprisingly, in this capitalist system. And socialism kind of faded from popularity well before the economic collapse caused by the Great Depression in the late 20s. In any event, a very important book in our history, and also one that you can use to understand a good deal about the experience of immigrants today, the undocumented workers in particular. Although some of their trials and tribulations may be different from what Jurgis and his family experienced, really it's not all that much different, and this is not uncommon for immigrants today as well. So keep that in mind as you work through this book. You're going to read this book and actually have it done by week 4, and you're going to do a short paper on it and turn it in, and then you'll be done with that. But I think it will do a lot to illustrate the importance of social welfare and some of the ways that capitalism undermines the lives of the common man. And I should say, the common person, not the common man. So if you open the course, you're going to find the course syllabus is one of the first items in the menu on the left of your screen. Click on that and you will find your syllabus there. Please click on the link to the syllabus and download the Word copy. Print it out and keep it handy. You should always have a hard copy of your course syllabus with you. You'll also notice that the syllabus is broken out into sections on that particular page in Blackboard as well, so that you can, quick jump to certain sections if you wish to double check some of the things that are said there. This syllabus may be revised here and there. If there are any revisions, they'll be fairly minor ones, barring any unforeseen circumstances. And any revisions to the syllabus will be noted here in the Blackboard course, and you'll get an email to let you know that there's been changes to it. Be sure you understand the syllabus and let me know if you have questions. Now you'll see in the syllabus that you earn points through a variety of different activities. Participation in attendance, which basically means, checking in, and also means participating fully in all the activities in the course, which include the items listed below, the discussion boards, the journal entries, your paper in the jungle, participation in a group that you're going to work on a paper together, and so on. There are a number of different ways that you can earn points here. Each of them alone, with perhaps the exception of the activities associated with your group paper, are relatively small, but they all add up together. And so I really encourage you to be sure you participate in every activity and every grading element each week. Now that brings up something that I want to mention to you. This is an online course, and for those of you that maybe have not had online courses before, particularly one such as this that is what we call totally asynchronous, where we don't have meetings, where we get together in Zoom or in person. This means that really it is up to you to time and pace yourself throughout the course. This means in this particular class, every item should be addressed each week. Your flexibility about when you do the work, when you do the readings, when you listen to the lectures, when you make your posts, really are up to you, but really up to you within the week. Now, that doesn't mean I won't accept a late post here and there, but if you're going to keep up, you should be posting in discussion boards every week. You should be posting your journal entries every other week, those kinds of things, because the discussion boards aren't merely something for you to answer a question, but it's really supposed to be your opportunity to interact with some of your classmates, and that means you got to do that sort of in real time within the week. So remember, do all your work within the week and try to have it all done. I mean, that can be done by the end of the week before the next learning unit opens. Okay. You see here, there's the paper in the jungle is worth 75 points. I'll talk about each of these items in a few minutes, so I won't go into these in detail. There also is an opportunity for to earn bonus points with a few extra discussion boards during the semester. Blackboard will be confused by bonus points, and I'll tell you more about that in a few moments. There's your grading scale. I still missed this. It's actually based on 665 points, not 640. I thought I had all of that. And so you can see there the grading scale based on 665 points. Now, again, Blackboard tells me when you check in on the class, and so I can tell if you're working regularly or not. But your participation and attendance to me also means that you're really completing your discussion boards on time and responding to your classmates' posts as well as your instructions will tell you to do. It means that you're making your journal posts on time, that you work with your group and your group project steadily, those kinds of things. And so it's not just showing up, but it's also participating. And even though we don't actually get together, you're going to be interacting with your classmates and with me quite a bit. So for discussion boards, you'll find the item each week in your weekly course content. And there's also an item in the course menu, but I encourage you to access discussion boards through the weekly course content by clicking through each week's rather than by going directly to discussion board for a number of different reasons. But in any event, each week you'll find one and 3 times during the semester 2 discussion boards that present you with a question, and you're to respond to that question with an original post of at least 150 words. That's not a lot of writing, really, but at least 150 words. I encourage you to write more. And then you're going to go back a few days later and check with what your classmates have posted in discussion board and respond to their posts. Now, you don't just respond by saying, I agree, or I don't agree, or that's great, but really respond with something fairly substantial. Now, your responses don't have to be 150 words. Only your original post does, but you should respond with something meaningful, talking about why you agree or why you disagree, or some other thought you might have about something that your classmates said. If you subscribe to your discussion board posts, and you'll see a button there that allows you to do that, you'll get notified by email when somebody responds to your post, and you can go back in and respond back to that person, and that's really how a discussion happens in this setting. This, in an online course, your discussion board forum is similar to classroom discussions. You won't find me chiming in too much in those discussion boards. I will occasionally, but really I will be monitoring and reading what you write and grading it, but the discussion should be between you guys about what it is you're studying. So you make your original post of 150 words or more within a week after the discussion board opens. You respond to at least 2 classmates' posts within another 4 days after that week. And that will earn you up to 10 points, depending upon, whether or not your posts are substantial and reasonable. And I'll do doing the grading after the end of those. It's what amounts to 11 days, I think, from the time the discussion board's open. So your original post and 2 responses will get you 10 points each week, 100 points during the course of the entire semester. Next, you have a journal, and this is actually, I think, in the weekly course content, it's called your Scrapbook Journal. You do this every other week, and this is based upon current events related to social welfare, human rights, social work, whatever that might be, women's issues, issues about race. It could be about the economy and how individuals are responding. It might be about education, anything related to social welfare, really, and well-being of individuals and human rights. So watch the news, scan the internet, read the paper, magazines, whatever it might be, and select some story from the last 2 weeks. Summarize it briefly in your own words. Don't copy and paste from an article. Put it in your own words. And then have a separate paragraph where you write a response to that news article. What you think about it, how you feel about it, those kinds of things. Now, unlike the discussion board where that is something that is read by everybody in the class, the journal is just between you and me. And so you might want to get into some things that are more personal. If you wish to do that, you're not required to do that, but if you wish to do that, this is a chance to do that. So it's sort of like the opportunity for you, if you were in a classroom with me, to take me by the arm at break and say, hey, can I talk with you after class? I have something about something we've studied that I'd like to talk over with you or tell you about. And it's sort of a private conversation, more or less. Now this, because it is only every other week, and it's worth 20 points, not 10. Your reaction paragraph that is separate and apart from your summary paragraph of the news item, your reaction should be a minimum of 200 words each week. So you get 20 points for that. There'll be 5 of those during the semester, so that's another 100 points towards the 665. Again, if you want to know how to write a good journal post, there's something in this week's course content also. And if you look in how your posts board and journal grading guidelines in the course manual, you'll find a great example of a journal post using the format that I want. You want to cite the source, a brief summary of the source, what it says, and then your reaction to it. I'll be grading those based on content, of course, in your reaction, the length of your reaction, and also the form, whether or not you're really kind of sticking with the format that I provide for you. And the reason for this format, by the way, is because what it's doing, first of all, is telling you, I want to know where you got this information, where it comes from, so that I can go check it out, okay, if I want to. Secondly, and this is something you're going to be doing in your papers also, you're going to be citing sources in your papers. So your reader should always know where what you're referring to and be able to go check that independently. Particularly in this day and age of, a lot of fake news out there and things like this, you always want to check your sources. So first you cite your source. Secondly, you give an objective summary. And by objective, I mean, free of emotion, but just basically saying, this is what the article says, or this is what happened, that kind of thing. So it's an objective view of what occurred. And then the last paragraph, which is that 200-word minimum, is your subjective response to that event. It's your feelings or your thoughts about that, so that you're separating out what actually happened from your thoughts and feelings. Again, another thing that I think is a skill we all have to have in analyzing information about what's going on in the world around us. As I mentioned a few times already, you're going to write a paper and turn it in by the end of week 4, I believe it is, or the beginning of week 5. And the paper is 3 to 4 pages long. I prefer 1.5 spacing, and a paper. It doesn't really matter. But about 1,000 or 1,200 words. So I'll look at your word count. But and there's 3 parts to this to turn in a good full credit paper. 1, a brief summary of what happened in the book. Show me that you read it. Okay. Secondly, what your reaction to it was. What your thoughts were about what occurred in the book or whatever. And thirdly, find some things that tie into the course concepts that you've studied. If you can get those 3 elements in the paper, you'll have a full credit paper there. And you're going to submit the paper as a Word attachment through the assignments link in the course menu. And that item will become available to you shortly. Oops, where'd that come from? Okay, 75 points for that. Now, you're going to be assigned here within the next few weeks to a group of 3 to 4 people. This is a relatively small class, and so it depends on, how many students we have as to how many people are going to be in your group. But 3 or 4 students, and you're going to be divided up into 2 halves. One half will do a pro position on a controversial topic that I'll assign to you. The other half will do the con position in that. And now, this is not a paper that's intended to be persuasive. So let's say, for instance, the topic is abortion. The pro or yes people to the question, should we permit first-term abortions in our society? Let's say that's the controversy. The yes people will answer that question, and what they're going to do is go look for material that the people who believe that we should permit it, make use of to support their position. And the people who have the no side will look for material that the people who believe the opposite use to support their position. But you're not writing to convince your classmates of anything. You're doing research, and you're just digging up, what it is that each side thinks about it. And again, take your opinions out of this, take your emotions out of this, try to be as factual as possible, and you'll have a great paper. Both sides, you're going to have a team, so there'll be maybe a couple of you. If we have the number we have right now, there may be 1 or 2 groups with just 3 members, and that means one person is going to be doing all the research for one side, but it's not a huge paper anyway. But when you have 2 people in the yes or no section, you can divvy up that research and put it together. But in the end, the 3 or 4 of you, the yes and the no sides, are going to put one paper together and present it to me. Now, this is going to require you to work together, to check in with each other, to start working very quickly, and to not procrastinate. It's going to require that you communicate with your group members regularly so that everybody knows what everybody else is doing. Also, you're going to need to decide who it is going to pull all of this together in the end and how it's going to be edited, because we don't want a paper with 3 or 4 individual papers like mashed together. We want one paper. That means somebody's going to have to edit it and to make sure it's consistent as to form and style all the way through before it's submitted. And so you're going to be required to submit your written portion of the paper a week before to the group. Okay, you submit that to the group a week before the final paper is due to me. So that will give whoever's doing the editing, whether it's one of you or all of you, will give you time to edit it and put together a good paper in that last week. So this paper is going to be about 12 pages altogether from the group. It's about 4,000 words. It's a bigger project, but it's worth 150 points. So this is something you want to make sure you work on. And if you have procrastination tendencies, put them away and work steadily with your group members. Communication is so important in this project. So in order to encourage this, there's going to be two parts. And when I announce these groups, which will be in a couple of weeks, I will give you 2 dates that you're required to check in with each other. And you need to do that in your Blackboard group site. You'll have a site to work in your Blackboard class that is just for your group. No one else can see it except for me. And so you can exchange materials there, and you have your own discussion board and, file exchanges and things like that. I know that students prefer sometimes to get together and do this stuff at Starbucks, although you're probably not going to be doing that this summer. I hope. You shouldn't be. But maybe through Google Docs or even over Zoom or something like that. That's all well and good, but I can only grade based upon what I see, and the only thing I can see is what's in the Blackboard group site. So if you're doing work in some other area like Google Docs or something like that, be sure you're checking in the group site to make by those dates that I'm going to give you for the check-in. There'll be 2 of them, so that I know that you're working with your group. And if you do that, each of those check-ins will be worth 20 points. More about that at the time that the group paper is assigned. When you submit your paper, you're going to submit it through a file exchange, and I'll upload it. I'll make some notes and grade it, and make marginal comments and all that kind of professor stuff, and then I'll upload it back to you so that you each have a copy of the graded paper. But I'm going to take a clean copy of your paper and post it in a discussion board forum later in the semester, and your classmates will read your paper and will participate in a discussion board about your topic with you. It's called the peer review, and that's going to be worth 50 points. There are 2 tests during the semester. The first one is worth 40 points. The second is worth 60. The last test, the 60-point test, is cumulative, so it will cover the entire semester. You will take these tests through Blackboard, so you don't have to go anywhere. No proctoring. You can be open book. The only thing I say is please be sure you do your own test. That's all. And it's sort of the honor system, of course. Now, the thing is, there are a few things that are built in to kind of make sure you do your own. And one is there's a timer on it. So when you open the test, you'll have a set amount of time in order to complete it. I think the first one is 60 minutes. The second one is 120 minutes. I believe that's how it is. And if you haven't finished the test at the end of that time period, the test will close, and whatever questions you've answered will be your score. So when you open your test, don't figure on getting up and, going to get a cup of coffee and sitting down and have a snack and then going back to it. You got to work on that test as though you were in the classroom taking the test. If you don't like your first score, you can go back. You don't have to get permission from me. You can go back in and retake the test. And the higher of your 2 scores will be the one that will be recorded. The test will be available from Thursday in the week that it opens. I believe that's, I'm not sure in this course in the summer. But anyway, you'll get plenty of notice. When it opens, it'll be open on Thursday morning of a particular week, and it will be open for the rest of that week and the whole following week until Sunday night of the week after. So it'll be open for 11 days, available to you to take. And so that gives you plenty of time to get in there and take your test, and then to take it again if you want to. When the test has closed, it will no longer be available to you, so don't miss the closing date. You'll be well aware of what the opening and closing dates are when the test comes. And the test will open up in your weekly course content like everything else. As I mentioned, there will be 3 weeks with 2 discussion boards, and so you can earn an extra 10 points there. I would encourage you to respond to both discussion boards. It may not seem like a lot, but at the end of the semester, you might want those 10 points. Now, about a note about how Blackboard sees these things. Blackboard doesn't really understand extra credit, and so you're going to see if you decide to just do one of the 2 discussion boards that week, that's perfectly okay. That's all you're required to do. But the one that you don't do is going to have 0 in your grade center because you didn't get any points for that grading element. That's all it means, is you don't earn any points for that particular grading element. It does not mean that you got an F. So please, I always get questions about this, even though I tell people this over and over and over again. But understand that it just means you didn't get any points for the second discussion board because you didn't do it. That's all. It's not an F, not an F. The course will open to announcements, and please check to see if there's any new announcements you haven't seen. They should be at the top of your feed. You should be getting emails every time I post an announcement also. And if you don't get that announcement in an email, there may be something wrong with your email account, and I encourage you to check with IT about that, because this is really how I communicate with you. It's very important that you're aware of these things. The most important link in your course, as far as I'm concerned, is the weekly course content. When you click on that, you'll see each week the new course content for the following week or the next week will open every Sunday morning. Now, the first week, obviously, it'll be on Monday, but after this, every Sunday morning at probably 12:05 a.m., a new week will open with new assignments and new lectures and new discussion boards and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sunday morning, every week. Okay, so always check and make sure that you look through this and read every slide every week. Now, here's pretty much what you're going to see every week in weekly course content. So be sure you actually see all the slides. This is one of the reasons why I don't want you accessing your discussion boards and journals through the link on the course menu, because it shortcuts you moving through these slides. And in fact, the first few weeks, in order to get to any slide, you're going to have to go through every slide. So if you want to get to one of the last slides, you're going to have to click through everything to get there. And that's just to make sure you understand what is usually there every week. After a few weeks, I leave up on that, and you can skip around if you want. But there will be introductory panels and closing panels written by me. I hope you'll take the time to read them, because I do spend a good bit of time thinking about what to say. And it also gives you an idea of the things I want you thinking about as you go through the course material. So again, it's sort of like me talking with you in a class, and I really want you to hear this stuff. You'll see the week's learning objectives. The assignments will be there for you in a separate slide every week, what you have to do during the week. You'll find lectures. Now, some weeks you're actually going to find 5 different lectures, because remember, we're cramming 15 weeks into 10. And in a 15-week course, or 16 if you include the break week, you still are supposed to have, 3 hours of contact time. And so in a 10-week course, that's more than 4 hours. Now, these lectures are really kind of class time with me. This is what you'd be hearing if you were listening to me lecture in class. And so I don't want to apologize for the length of time. You don't sit in a Zoom meeting or classes with me, and this is really your class time. So please understand it that way. Set aside time to listen to these lectures. They're very important, and I hope you'll learn from them. Some weeks there's 1 or 2, others there's 3 or 4. Once or twice you might find 5 lectures. Most of them are pretty short. A few of them are not. Okay, you're not going to find that your lectures go over 4 hours in a week, as for a summer semester. So, okay, you'll find the discussion board links. You'll find every other week you'll find an e-scrapbook or journal link. I will post copies of the slides to my lectures, PDF copies, so that if you want to download them or refer to them later when you're studying or taking your test even, they'll be there for you. And so that's pretty much every week. You'll also find in the weeks that there are the 2 weeks that the tests open, you'll find them in your weekly course content. You're going to find a few other things here and there that I post that I think you'll find interesting. But what you see here is pretty much the bare minimum of what you should see pretty much every week. I'm not so sure anymore with the younger generation, at least, that I really need to talk about etiquette. This is something that we introduced when we first started doing online learning, but it's interesting to me that from time to time I still find that people cross the lines occasionally, not really thinking about the fact that there are people with feelings and sensitivities, and individual experiences on the other end of that electronic communication. You don't really know a lot about your classmates. You're going to introduce yourselves to each other in a limited way in the first week, this week, but you really, unless you really know each other, you're not going to know a whole lot about each other unless, classmates choose to open up and be very personal. And so you don't know, for instance, if you have people that, well, you may know whether or not they belong to racial minorities. You may or may not know whether or not they're gender fluid or they're homosexual or, anything along those lines. And so when you write about particular topics, you want to be aware of the fact that other people are reading these topics, and you don't want to say things that will be offensive to others or will be hurtful to others. Now, most students that take this course really have enough sensitivity to understand that, and I don't expect it to be a problem here. But if any of you find that someone is posting something that's offensive, please let me know, and I'll deal with that. Okay, enough said there. That includes, by the way, any kind of sexual references or jokes or things like this, inappropriate for a classroom, inappropriate for a college class. Don't write anything that you would not be comfortable saying to others face to face. And then the other thing I would say is try your best to be forgiving when other people make mistakes in things that they say, because sometimes we all get kind of clumsy, myself included, and it's not intentional. One more thing I will add to this, and again, you probably know this already, but we communicate not just with our words, but with the tone of our voice, the pace of our speech, our facial expressions, our body language, whether we, how we direct our eyes, those kinds of things. None of those other things are visible to your classmates when you write a post. The only thing they see is words. And so even if you're trying to be funny, being sarcastic or whatever, they may not know that. And so keep that in mind, that this is just one small slice of the way we communicate, and people can read a lot of things into what you write. So just be cautious. This week's discussion boards, again, as per usual, 150 words or more. And I'd encourage you to write a little more about yourself this week. It's really about you. And here's some ideas of things you might want to write about. What do you like? Why are you taking the course? What interests you? Where do you think your career is going to take you? Where'd you grow up? What are the important things in your background? What issues or topics are really important to you? Any of those kinds of things. And if you know each other, some of you do because you've had classes together, try to write something that is different from what people already know about you. I encourage you to add photographs, particularly here, to personalize your post. This is not required. It doesn't have to be of you, although I'd encourage you to make it of you, but it could be of your family, it could be of your pets, places you've been, whatever. But these are optional, but just would add to the post now and in all future weeks for that matter. In week 2, you're going to have your first journal entry, your first e-scrapbook entry, so be watching the news for articles related to social welfare, civil rights. And again, I have a long list of things that might be something that you might look for. Again, not to beat a dead horse here, but pick one of these stories, write a brief summary of the story in your own words, and then have a separate paragraph of a reaction of about 200 words or more to that item. You should have that posted by Sunday night of the next course week. And finally, as you begin to read the Phyllis Day text, I think you're reading the first 3 chapters. For this first week. I know I'm sorry for that. I don't like to give you assignments in your first week, but this is a compressed course, and so we got to hit the ground running. Pay particular attention to the 9 American values that she writes about. These are things that she believes that all of us have in the fabric of our being, whether or not we choose to believe it, whether we adopt and accept those values intellectually. She believes that these are a part of us inside, almost subconsciously. And these are concepts, these 9 values we're going to be returning to pretty frequently throughout the semester. So that's a very important thing to pay attention to. So with all of that, I've babbled on long enough, and I hope that this gives you a pretty good idea of what's ahead for you. Please let me know if you have any questions. And otherwise, I think you're going to find the material to be very good material. My students tend to be very happy with this material at the end of the semester. So I'm looking forward to working with you, and hope you'll let me know as questions come up. Thanks, and have a great summer with me, okay?